So, do you really know what the stand your ground law is? Do we really have a stand your ground law here in the state of Florida? You're about to find out. Hey, this is Joe. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, I am joined with Miss Lindsey Guns and our good friend, attorney Tim Harvey. What's up, guys?
Hello.
You got to say hello in the mic so they can actually hear you.
Hello.
Listen, there's a lot of stuff that's been going on in the news the past couple weeks. Let's just jump right into it. The situation that happened out here in Clearwater last week.
Right. A Markeis McGlockto, 28 years old, shot during a stand your ground or alleged stand your ground incident by a 47-year-old Clearwater resident. No charges have been filed. There's a lot of controversy over this, a lot of controversy with those of us who are firearms instructors. We've been discussing this a lot. Just some real good questions. I've seen a lot of misnomers, a lot of misinformation on Facebook. I tried to do damage control for the legal profession as much as I can, but there's a lot of misinformation out there right now.
Let's tell everybody that doesn't know about this story what really happened. Well, we don't know what really happened. Here's the big legal disclaimer. Here it comes.
We do not have all of the facts or access to all of the facts. What we have is what you have, what the news has reported, what we've seen of the videos. We have not done any interviews. This is just based on what we can see as members of the public. What happened was a gentleman and his girlfriend and their 3 kids in one vehicle pulled into a parking space, which was a handicapped parking space.
Do we know if they were handicapped?
They says they do not have a placard. I have not seen anything that says whether they are or aren't. The videos and the pictures I've seen of the parking space itself, there's some question as to whether it was even properly marked.
Okay,
but that's
here and there.
Yeah, that's kind of a extra bit of information. The gentleman went inside and started trying to purchase items inside the store. Outside, Mr. Drejka, the 47-year-old, took offense to the car being in the handicapped spot, walked over and started yelling and screaming at the female passenger of the car.
Now, when he was yelling and screaming at her, they were pretty close to each other.
They were within a couple feet of each other. They're, again, not there, didn't see, don't have the audio, don't know how aggressive it was.
But the video showed, we don't know what they said, how loud it was, but the video showed.
It seemed to be pretty heated. It was heated enough that people outside the store came inside the store to tell Mr. McGlockto that something was going outside that he might want to go out and
bingo
deal with. So it wasn't just a quiet conversation.
Yeah, to me right there was when people are coming in from the outside saying, hey, there's a big thing going on outside. There's a guy and a girl fighting. Yeah, that means there's a problem. Because just 2 people getting into an argument, whatever, out in the parking lot, who's going to go inside and tell the cashier or the employees what's going on outside? If I'm in the store and I got to go inside to tell the cashiers or something's going on, that's because I want them to call the cops.
Usually, yes.
And I just want to stay out of it.
That would be optimal to have everybody mind their own business, let law enforcement sort it out, calm everybody down.
I always mind my own business.
And everybody else is around you.
Pretty much, yes.
So do I. That's a throwback to the our experience as law enforcement
career.
We always want to know what's going on, and we always want to try and make it better. In this case, he walked outside. Mr. McGlockto walked outside, went to Mr. Drejka, and he violently pushed him. I won't say violently. Maybe is not the right word.
Let me give you my point on this, and Lindsey, chime in if you think I'm wrong, please. If I'm standing in the store buying something, waiting in line, I hear a customer come in or somebody just come in from the outside, say a guy and a girl are getting into a fight, whatever it is outside, and I poked my head out the door, and it happened to be my girlfriend or any female passenger of my vehicle. And I see this stranger in their face yelling and screaming, which from what I see was violently enough to draw the attention of other people. And Tim's going to give me the legal yelling, tongue lashing in a second. But yes, I am going to go out there and do what I have to do to make sure she is safe.
And I think all of us as adults would probably want to intervene in one of our family members or close friends being attacked like that. The question is, how much is too much? You have to have some restraint. Walking up and maybe yelling would be fine. That's what the other gentleman is doing. The push, you've moved from a verbal altercation to a physical altercation, and I don't denounce or make any statement saying that he was right to do that. I just don't. Moving to the physical altercation was what caused or precipitated the ultimate shooting and the controversy. If he'd walked up, yelled, screamed, they go on their separate ways, that's fine. No problem.
Well, if he's threatening her?
Well, that's what we don't know.
We don't know. Now, Lindsey, what would you think? If somebody was in your face yelling and screaming at you in a threatening manner,
yeah,
would you want me to come up there and push him out of the way?
Frankly, I have the ability to protect myself. So,
But-
frankly.
I mean, myself, if I saw, I'd go up, and the push would be the gentle way for me to do things. I know it's not the right way, but you're allowed to protect any human life.
Yes.
Yes.
If I was in fear for her safety.
And again, that's the information we do not know. That's outside of what information has been released, and information we don't know. And I hate to armchair quarterback the decisions made by the investigating officers. We don't know.
Be the couch sniper.
Yeah, you can do that. We don't know what exactly is happening, but Florida law defines assault, as a fear of, or an imminent fear of the use of force or the threatened use of force, and it can be by word or act. So if I pull my hand back and ball my fist up like I'm going to punch you, that's an assault, even though I never make contact with you.
Okay.
If I make a threat to you, or my body language makes me believe that an attack, a physical confrontation is coming, then that is a crime that I can defend myself against.
So if you're in fear for your life,
even less than that.
Bodily injury.
Well, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
That's we're getting into the stand your ground, the deadly use of force. This is just, and stand your ground doesn't mean always deadly force. It just means the ability to meet force with force. If you're being threatened, you have the right to defend yourself. And if it's a push and you push back, you're defending yourself. You don't have to worry about it.
Can you still protect any human?
You can protect other people from a reasonable threat of force. But your response to that has to also be reasonable. Now, if I push somebody who is elderly or maybe has balance issues and they fall to the ground, if my intent was not to push them to the ground, but was to push them away from whoever they were engaged in a verbal altercation, and I perceived it to be a threatening situation, and I was defending that person by pushing them away, and they fall to the ground, I think that you really have to evaluate whether or not that push constituted, a threat to serious bodily injury or death. If it was just a push.
So there was an age difference between these two, 20 some years.
28 and 47 are the ages.
Okay. So you got 20-year difference.
Yeah, you got a 20-year difference. But I hate to say this, I'm a 47-year-old.
I'm 45. So
if I don't consider myself to be a frail being at 47.
Well, this guy didn't look big either.
I don't know what his medical condition was. This is information we don't know.
No.
But he was subjected to a physical confrontation after he started a verbal confrontation. Whether or not that qualifies, to be, to make him as an aggressor, which will come up in a little bit in the conversation about aggressors can't use stand your ground. That's stuff that we don't have enough information to decide. But part of what we've seen online and part of what we've seen in Facebook and social media is misrepresentations of what qualifies as stand your ground defenses and how immunity works. And that's kind of why we wanted to do this, because there's some misinformation out there that we wanted to clear up.
There is a ton of misinformation out there. Listen, folks, if you have questions about this stuff, go ask a professional. If you have an attorney available that you can ask, go ask an attorney. If you know legitimate firearms instructors that actually teach this stuff in our course, go ask them. Hopefully they taught it in the course you took. I hate to say this, but get off YouTube.
Absolutely.
There's so much misinformation out there. It's ridiculous.
One of the problems with social media, YouTube, all this, Facebook and getting information is that may be perfectly valid information for a different state. When you're talking about Florida, we have to have information that is valid in Florida if you want to know, how to apply the rules. I watched the news the other night. They talked about how, this situation in Florida made national news and how this was not appropriate in this state under this information. So, well, you're not in that state and dealing with that information. You're dealing with Florida law. And, it was. Some of the things that came up that we'll get into is there is a prohibition keeping law enforcement from making a physical arrest unless they have the probable cause to prove that you weren't or that you had committed a crime and you were not defending yourself.
This particular case is going to be tough.
And this particular case is going to be tough because there's a lot of information we don't know.
Yeah. They had a couple witnesses, but we all know sometimes witnesses aren't, they just want to be on TV. Get their 15 minutes of fame.
Not all of your physical witnesses, see the same thing or they observe the same thing. They have different backgrounds, different education, things stick in their mind. So
the one witness I remember, he said something. We had an altercation with this same gentleman before, and the gentleman threatened to shoot him.
Right. This has sadly not been an isolated incident.
Yes. So to me, that would start. But we really got to wait to find out what the investigation turns out, what the detectives and the state's attorney do.
And the way it's been presented on the news is that it's over. It's done. They did roll that back a little bit and finally understood that there are other processes that are going on in the background, other agencies that are looking at this. So.
Yeah. I mean, my question too would be if the boyfriend that came up and pushed, what did he say? When they stopped the video, of course, it was right before he got shot. Was he saying something? Was he turning around with a knife or something? But we're going to talk more about this when we return. We'll be back in a second. And we're back talking about the Stand Your Ground law. I'm here with attorney Tim Harvey and Miss Lindsey Guns. Lindsey, what's your take on this so far that we've been talking about?
Honestly, there's not enough information.
Yeah.
I can't make a call. I can't make a judgment call yet, frankly.
I'm just making a guess of what I saw in the video. And again, if I saw somebody doing something like that, would I have pushed him as hard? I don't know.
And we don't know what his intent was. Was he intending to push him that hard, or was he? He seemed pretty intent on his action. It wasn't an accident that he pushed him.
No, it wasn't like he tripped and fell into the guy or anything like that.
No,
Did he mean to make the guy fall, or was he just trying to push him 2-3 feet away from the young lady in the situation?
And we don't know. And one of the valid points we talked about during during our little break here was, we don't know what he said as he was moving away. When the guy starts pulling the gun, when Mr. Drejka starts pulling the gun, Mr. McGlockto starts walking away. Now, I'm going to walk away. Somebody starts pulling a gun at me. I'm going to try and move away. But was he, threatening I'm going to get my gun? Was he going to reach for something? We don't know. And I don't want to say that he was. I don't want anybody to think that we're trying to badmouth, either party. We're just trying to explain how the law applies in this whole situation because we do not have all of the facts to this. The
sad thing about it is the guy was shot. He expired. He's deceased now, and it happened in front of his kids.
Yeah, I don't think watching this video, even with the push and the aggressiveness, that there should have been a death in this. This should not have resulted in a death.
To me, when two grown men get into a physical altercation, a fight, that's quality entertainment. I mean, people pay for this on pay-per-view. This was happening free in the parking lot.
Yeah, and again,
I'm only joking.
Yeah, again, we have two adults who should have behaved better.
Yes.
Mr. Drejka, who is the one complaining about the person's parking. Well, there's a process for that. You call the police department, they come out and they write a ticket. Yes. Or if the person does have a valid reason to park there, then it's solved. But taking it upon yourself just brings this into a thing. Make a snarky comment and walk on. It's not an issue. And I have a great number of friends who are in fact handicapped, several wheelchair bound, several paraplegics, that it offends me when I see somebody parked in a handicapped space or parked blocking their space. I can understand the need to do something, but it has never come to my mind to run at them and cause a physical altercation or cause even a verbal altercation. Get on my phone, have somebody tow their car.
And get those little joke ticket books that they have, stick it on their window.
I preferred writing the old actual ticket books,
But we can't do that anymore.
That's true. They
So
don't.
you
They
get the
won't
joke
let me
ones,
do
You
that.
stick them on there with like crazy glue. I'm only kidding. Don't damage people's cars.
Don't damage people's stuff.
Now, hypothetically speaking, who would be the aggressor in this situation?
Well, that's part of the problem. If you look at the statute that has to do with assaults in Florida, an assault is a threat to do harm to a person, and the other person believes they are going to be harmed. There's an imminent fear. It's an apprehension that it's actually going to happen, and this can be by word or act. So if a person, says, I'm going to hit you with a hammer, and they're standing there with a hammer and they have the ability to do so, and you feel they're going to do so, they've committed assault. Mm-hmm. That's a crime. So if the question is the aggressor is at the first commission of a crime, if this person's attitude, and it doesn't have to be a specific threat like that, it can be a person's attitude. I remember one of my earliest, assault cases where I was, as a police officer, I arrested a person for assault. I was trying to get this person out of a house. They were, it was a domestic violence situation prior to the changes in laws in Florida, which required an arrest. Back in the days when we said, if one of you leaves, that'll be fine. Now it's not like that. You get, the arrest is mandatory if we have a primary aggressor. But the guy, when I started trying to ask him to step outside, turned towards me, planted his feet, balled up his fists, and pulled his right arm back, in preparation for a fight. I took him to the ground right away, and I handcuffed him for an assault on a law enforcement officer. That was a conviction, that went through, because his actions led me to believe that the physical battery, the hitting of me, was next, and that I anticipated that was going to happen.
You're not going to wait for him to hit you.
No, you don't have to, and that's what assault. So if
I like a pepper,
assault and pepper. Yeah. If you look at it that way, if you look at assault being the first action, the first aggressive action, assault is a misdemeanor in the state of Florida. And the young lady that was in the car with Mr. McGlockton, I apologize, I keep mispronouncing his name. But if she felt that Mr. Drejka was about to physically harm her, even push her, battery in Florida is the unwanted touching of another. It doesn't have to be, painful, doesn't have to be, cause injury. Just a simple battery is, pushing, whatever. If she felt that was about to happen, and if the gentleman, Mr. McGlockton, coming out of the store, walking up on this altercation, this verbal altercation, felt that was about to happen, and he took action to prevent that, then the primary aggressor is the person who made that young lady feel that way, would be Mr. Drejka. And then, under Florida law, you can't use stand your ground as a defense. You can't use, I'm defending myself. No, you started the fight. The only time you can use that is after, if you start the event, you are then pushed or someone defends, themselves or someone else using force, and you try to disengage. You try to get away. You surrender. I'm done. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get this. I try and get away, and they still keep coming. Then you can claim that you're now defending yourself because it was way more than you expected. But if you didn't, if you were the ones who started this, and you basically got your butt kicked because you started it,
it happens.
There's no stand your ground defense in that. You're not allowed to use that. The statute doesn't permit it. We don't want people to go start something and then try and claim I had to shoot somebody because they were going to harm me. Well, they weren't going to harm you until you came and started, harming them. So that's something that needs to be looked into.
For every action, there's a reaction, and we should be held responsible for our actions.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to do stupid things, win stupid prizes.
I agree.
Famous quote by a friend of ours.
I had something weird happen to me just the other day. I know, Tim, you're aware of it. Mm-hmm. And answer this question for me, how you folks would look at this, because I'm going to see it from my point of view only. Driving down the road, There was a car in front of me, and everybody out there gets annoyed when you're in the inside lane, aka the left lane, the passing lane on 75. I'm driving, of course, at the posted speed limit.
Okay, we'll believe that.
And the car in front of you is barely doing 50 miles an hour. You get aggravated.
Absolutely. There's a place for that vehicle.
So basically, I was driving down the road.
In the right lane.
There was a couple cars. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a couple cars in front of me. And we're all going, right around 50 miles an hour. Then this car would continually brake check, slam on the brakes. Then when cars would try to pass it finally on the right-hand side, the car would speed up and kind of block people in with this 18-wheeler.
I like to call those people lane monitors.
I have other names for them. But again, I'm from Jersey, and I can't use these words on the radio. So basically, a couple of cars snuck around, and I get up behind this car, and I'm just like, what's going on here? And the person and I can't see through the windows really because they're tinted. And it was just a bigger Cadillac. So, of course, I flashed my lights twice. Hey, wake up. You got about a mile long traffic behind you. You're holding everybody up. They kept just slamming on the brakes every couple seconds. Of course, everybody starts getting angry. Cars behind me are like going off the road. Finally, the 18-wheeler that was in the center lane, I guess he saw what was going on, or she, whoever was driving the 18-wheeler. And they kind of swerved a little bit into the left lane. Then they moved all the way over into the right lane.
To clear up a way for you to get around.
Clear a path, yes. And at that point in time, the car in front of me slammed on their brakes, and I was able to make the quick pass around them. Next thing you know, I see the car next to me in the shoulder.
Off the
highway.
Yeah, off the highway, off the travel section of the roadway.
Yes, in the shoulder, coming up trying to pass me.
Not a good place to be.
What is this person trying to do? And I'm sorry if this is taking way too long. So anyway, of course, I just accelerate a little bit more, get away from that car. I'm getting off the next exit. So I move over into the right lane to get off the exit. And of course, I use my blinker. I get off and the car's getting off the exit with me. So I'm like, what coincidence is this? We're getting off the same exit. And it's a busy exit, State Road 70. So as soon as I got off the exit, I moved completely all the way over into the left to the turning lane to go down Lean the Road to get to the shop, Aegis Tactical. There's my little plug. The car's still behind me. Then I can look. I'm looking in my rearview mirror, and they're about 20 yards behind me, and all I can see is a hand making a gesture, like point to the side of the road, but it could have been mistaken. Like it looked like a gun.
Right.
Because, they were just using their index finger and their middle finger and had their thumb kind of pointed at a 90-degree angle. I didn't look at it that way. I was like, this person wants to pull me over and fight me. I was like, what's this person's problem? So I'm like, whatever. So I'm driving down the road, and they're right behind me again. So interesting. So, of course, I pass by the shop. I don't want to bring him into the shop. I go to the end of the road. Now, it's a dead-end street.
Right. They clearly weren't going this way.
No, not at all. So I am been trained to do certain things. So I get around the bend. I give it some more gas. It's a dead-end road. I know it. And I get the car stuck in not my car, their car stuck in the dead end. They couldn't really go anywhere at that point in time. I didn't block them in, but if I wanted to, it would have been easy.
Right.
They were in the choke point. They only had one way to go, and I was controlling which way they were going to go. Because I had no idea what they were going to do. I didn't know who was in the car, what was going to happen.
What kind of road rage thing have we been seeing on the news with people, chasing people down and shooting them? That's a legitimate fear.
Now, what would you think in this situation? Who would be the aggressor at this point in time? Me for flashing my lights?
Nope, because you were still going in the direction you were planning on going. This person changed their whole plan to follow you.
Yes. Well, we're going to finish this story in 1 second because it really gets interesting. We'll be right back. And we're back, and we're talking about, I'm talking again with Tim Harvey, our attorney, and Miss Lindsey Guns is here. She's being quiet tonight. But we're sitting there talking about an incident that happened to me the other day. And basically a car driving like, I don't want to say it.
Driving with some sort of mental impediment to the driver. We'll go with that.
Yes, we'll go with that one. Then they followed me. Clearly, again, our shop is on a dead-end street. There's no place to go. You're coming down here for a specific business. That's it.
It seems to be, to sum it up, there was a little bit of a road rage incident. They were mad at you. They wanted to follow you. There was no accidental turn down this road because it's where the Walmart's on. The shop is on a dead end road. You don't accidentally get here. We're lucky to see maybe 4,000 cars on this road a month.
Yes.
So it was kind of something where they chased you.
Yes.
Basically, that is going to be, if I were to look at that from a law enforcement standpoint, first of all, if they called 911 or they called Star FHP or they called to talk to somebody, whoever they talked to would have told them to stop following you. Give them the information. They will take the information, vehicle information, but stop following. It's not your job. And that raises people's concern. We don't know what the intent of the person would be when they're following somebody, when they're so angry that they feel it necessary to follow somebody and try and get them to pull over so they can have at least a verbal altercation with them, at the very least. But that's a lot of energy to expend for that.
And it's really not worth it. I mean, I'll finish the story in a second. I'll get more into it. The question I have to ask you now, Tim. I tried to find a statute for road rage in the state of Florida.
The closest thing you're going to find is what's called aggressive driving.
I saw that.
Aggressive driving means you do two or more things. You speed while changing lanes without using your signal. But road rage itself,
nobody uses a signal in this state.
I know the parent
blinker fluid evaporated or something.
Yeah, believe me, one of my favorite things to do when I was a law enforcement officer was to do traffic enforcement, just for that very reason.
I would volunteer to do it for 1 week.
I think there would be a lot of people who would join you. Yeah. But in Florida, the way they look at road rage is the actual violent action. So if they come at you with their car or they swerve into your lane, the road rage isn't its own statute. They would put that as, using that vehicle to commit a battery, which would be aggravated battery because the vehicle would be considered a deadly weapon. They would treat that as the physical confrontation, not as a separate thing calling road rage. But aggressive driving, for those people who drive too fast, they follow too closely, they make lane changes, improper lane changes. Case law in Florida, I hate to say this, but without making a lane change, if your lane change doesn't cause anybody else to have to take evasive action to brake or anything else, then you're not really required to use.
That's so ridiculous.
Turn signal, even though it requires it in the statute. The case law has kind of backed away from that.
Use a blinker. Be considerate to your fellow drivers.
Absolutely. Listen, I've chased people, high-speed pursuits where the bad guy used his blinker. It was awesome.
We have another story we might be able to talk about at the end about using a blinker, which was I was proud. It was funny. I was a little proud. But anyway, get back to the story here. So now I'm at the end of the road, and I'm in a position where I'm in control at that point in time. And that's just back in what we used to do for a living. And the car finally comes up to where I can actually see the occupants, or the occupant, as it turns out to be, of the vehicle. And of course, I was ready. I was armed. And she had to be about 70 years old.
Oh, dear Lord.
Exactly.
And at 70 years old, she was going to do what? Well, you may have gotten a grandma, yell down. You might have gotten talking to.
I would apologize at that point in time because I'm respectful with that.
Grandmas carry handbags, though.
But I was so angry and outraged at that point in time, just because here's a 7-year-old. If it wasn't me and if it was somebody else, there's a good chance she could have got shot.
And there are a number of people out there that just don't care about our elders and are more apt to fly off the handle. This kind of thing could have made them very angry, without the self-control necessary to pull back and go, well, she's 70 years old and probably shouldn't be doing this.
I yelled a little bit, and it was a real quick one, just basically asking if they were crazy.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a legitimate question.
Then I just left. I went back to work. It's not even worth it at that point in time. But if it was anybody else, say it was even another elderly person that's in fear for their life now because they got this strange car that just followed them down a dead-end road for no apparent reason.
Yeah, I can see where that would be very concerning. And
making what could have been taken as a gun symbol with their hand.
Right.
I mean, they could have just been shot.
it could have happened that way. Now, you're going to look at the totality of the circumstances to decide whether or not that was would be a justified shooting in that event. If you can, as long as you can still drive away. And, we talk about stand your ground, that you don't have to, but it doesn't mean you can't.
There's no harm in running away, folks, or driving away.
Absolutely.
My job at the end of the day is to go home and have a meal.
Absolutely.
And
in my case,
tell
too.
By looking at the video, if you're watching right now, I haven't missed one in a long time.
Same.
How about you, Lindsay?
Have I missed a meal?
Yes.
A couple.
Okay. And folks, if you want to watch this, you can jump right on our Facebook page, Talking Guns with Joe. The video will be up live right after the show airs, and we also have it up on YouTube and everything else. I'm sure Tim will have it on his Facebook page.
If I can figure out how that social media stuff works, I'll
give you a hand with that. What's your Facebook page?
My Facebook page is at T Harvey Law. I'm a full service law firm in Sarasota, Bradenton area. So.
Tim does great work. He's aggressive. I've known him for a while. I'm giving him a good plug because we're friends. And you can also check out Lindsay's page. And what's your page?
Lindsay Guns.
Pretty easy to remember. But anyway, so I get back to the shop afterwards. I walk into the shop, and I believe, Tim, I think you were here.
I had just walked in.
And I'm telling everybody this story because I was upset and angry, but I was laughing at the same time.
It turned out to be a little more humorous than it could have been. I mean,
Yes.
there was absolutely some apprehension up until the point where you realize it's a 70-year-old grandma that's probably.
And I couldn't see in the car.
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was one person in the car or 5 people. But anyway, I'm laughing. And what happens about a half hour after we're there? We're talking about laughing.
And a friend of mine that I used to work with years ago walks in the door, and he's on duty with the local sheriff's department, and looks and says, "Are you driving the SUV?" Now, I drive one, Joe drives one. I'm like, well, you have to be a little more specific. Which SUV? And he says, the gold one. And I just kind of bow my head and start laughing because I realized this young lady went to the point of after, chasing Joe down, she called the sheriff's department on him. And they came out and they realized that this was not what she alleged it to be.
Yeah, I think she yelled at the dispatcher.
She yelled at the dispatcher because she didn't know where she was and didn't know, didn't have the right address. She was looking at unit numbers, not, building addresses, and really just refused to meet with the officer, and seemed to have a bee in her bonnet, I think was the term used to use. So.
That'd be good. So the moral of the story is, if somebody cuts you off by mistake, there's no need to chase them and follow them down the road. First off, you don't know who you're following.
Absolutely. There are too many people out there that don't know how to restrain themselves. They don't know how to de-escalate situations, and you don't want to get those people, following you. I remember driving to work one day as a police officer. I had taken my patrol car in for service, so I was driving my personal vehicle into work. Full uniform, ready to go. Right in front of me, a gentleman gets out of his car, goes up and starts kicking the front door of the car in front of him because apparently the lady had cut him off. And this young lady was terrified. And this guy's throwing stuff, broke her window, kicking her door.
Holy cow.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, where's a police officer when you need one? Oh, wait a minute. I get out of the car, I go up, and in mid kick, I grab him, throw him on the hood of the car, handcuff him, and get a bunch of cheers from the people around because, here's this guy who's violently, attacking her and her car, put her in fear, caused about $3,000 worth of damage to the car.
It's a good point here now. He was beating on their car and broke a window. Could this be a possible carjacking?
It could be, and I didn't know what it was at the time, and I figured that out later. What I did know is he committed a crime, and he did it in my presence, and And
the only reason I'm asking that, say you weren't there wasn't a law enforcement officer there at that point in time, and Lindsay's sitting in her car, and somebody comes up to it and starts beating up her car, which is kind of funny. Somebody's actually going to fight a car.
Yeah,
there was a story about that too.
There was some anger.
I think that was roid rage. But you have Lindsay, you're sitting in your car and somebody starts beating it and breaks your window. What's the first thing that's going to come through your mind?
If I can drive away, I'm going to drive away.
Okay, but what do you think they're trying to do?
Get into my car.
I think that's a reasonable belief. And if you were to defend yourself at that point, if you were to pull your firearm because you believe you're imminently the victim of a carjacking, which is a felony, a forcible felony,
Forcible felony.
Justified all day.
then and you defend yourself by shooting this person,
Right.
You stand your ground. You're in your car. That's a place you're lawfully allowed to be.
Yep.
And you're in a place where you're lawfully allowed to be, and you are the victim or the person who is being put in fear because of the actions of this violent, aggressive, in this case, a road rage guy. But you don't know that. You don't have to know. You just have to reasonably believe that you're in fear of death or serious bodily injury.
So in that situation, if that person shot that,
I would be there to testify to what was going on, and in that situation, if she had shot him, she would have been justified in doing so.
So you can bring that full circle around to the McGlockto-Drejka issue, though. Was he reasonably in fear for his life?
And
that's the part we don't know.
That is correct. That is the information we don't have enough facts about.
Right.
yeah, so I think everybody's got to just stop coming up with conclusions already and just wait for the facts to actually come out. We're just trying to spread some light on this and all the misinformation out there on the interwebs. But we'll be back in just 1 second. We'll finish this up. Hey, thanks for sticking with us. Again, I am Joe, and you're listening to Tim Harvey talking here and Miss Lindsey Guns. And we're going to finish up talking about the basically stand your ground stuff.
Yeah, and some misinformation that has been out there that I've seen, especially this week. The first one I'd like to talk about was the law enforcement agency not arresting the gentleman in Mr. Drejka in our scenario here. They're prohibited from doing so. They're not allowed to make a physical arrest unless they can prove that he committed a crime.
And it's hard to prove at this point in time because I don't know if the officers that arrived, did they have access to the video?
I don't believe they did.
Of course, they're going to interview as many witnesses as they can, but most of the time in that situation, detectives come out.
Anytime there's going to be a death investigation, you usually have that bumped up to detectives. I think it may have been a little too early for Sheriff Galtieri, and I respect that he's a law enforcement officer with a great deal of experience, and that he's also an attorney with a great deal of experience. I respect that. I think maybe it was a little premature to come out and say that the person was justified and that we're not going to make an arrest. He's within his right to do so. And like I said, I'm hesitant to say that. I may have taken a little more of a wait and see kind of a thing. We're still investigating. We're gathering information. I would have punted it. I would have literally, I hate to say this, but I would have pumped that up to the state attorney's office. Here's all the information we have. This is what we believe happened. This is all the information that we have at this point. And let them make the final decision on whether charges were going to be filed or not. That's where it's at now.
Law enforcement, like we've talked before, is one of the only careers out there where stuff rolls uphill.
Absolutely. There is a process, and you don't have to take it all upon yourself. If the officer on the street, the first responding one, isn't sure what to do, or they have questions, they can always bump it up to someone higher, ask questions higher, and that person can bump it up. And in this case, you're still allowed to do your investigation. When I say you can't make a physical arrest, you're still allowed to do your full, complete investigation. That is allowed by law. But you can't make a physical arrest unless you have enough probable cause, which is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt in court conviction, but enough probable cause to believe that the actions, constituted a violation of the law.
Yeah.
So that's a lower limit. But we need to, the law enforcement officers have to make that determination. If they can't, they can still file all of their information and provide their charging recommendations to the state attorney's office, and let the state attorney's office, who ultimately files charges anyway, decide whether they feel they have enough to file charges. Some of the misinformation I've seen on the web had to do with immunity from prosecution for stand your ground. There are two separate immunity segments. Yep. One's for the criminal, one's for the civil.
Correct.
They were being missed. The one thing I saw that I had to respond to on Facebook and say, listen, this is you have the right idea, you're in the wrong place. They were saying that if the sheriff the sheriff was to arrest Mr. Drejka, and it was found that he was, after a hearing, was found to have actually been proper in using, force to defend himself, that the sheriff would be responsible for paying damages and attorney's fees and all this stuff. That is not factual. That is part of the civil process, the civil immunity process, not part of the criminal. If he has probable cause and he arrests based on probable cause, even if there's no conviction later, you're good as long as you have probable cause to make the arrest at the time you determine.
But at that point, wouldn't it not be the sheriff anyway? It would be the state?
Well, for an arrest, it would be the sheriff. For a prosecution, it would be the state. Sheriffs, the law enforcement does the arrest. The prosecution in the state of Florida, the state attorneys, they determine whether there's going to be a prosecution or not. If they don't feel that they have enough to reach that level of beyond a reasonable doubt in court, they may not file charges on cases. And it's always frustrating to law enforcement officers who, I had good probable cause for that arrest. Yes, you do, but that level is lower than what they need to prove in court.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. Many times I've watched people.
Well, they only want to go up to cases that are going to be grand slams.
Sometimes there's that, and when you consider the caseload of each individual state attorney, you really don't want to spend time with losers. You don't want to spend time with cases you can't prove. Not that you don't believe that they've committed the offense or that they're guilty, but that you can't get enough evidence to prove
correct
that action.
To a point, I kind of respect that because they're not tying up our tax dollars on useless cases.
Correct. It's kind of, they're the first, we in law enforcement are the first doorway to get into the criminal justice system. And then, they have to be a gatekeeper as well so that we don't get frivolous arrests and we don't get frivolous charges that waste our tax dollars and our court time. That's where we're at right now with this case, is that the state attorney's office is reviewing the facts that they have, and they have access to more than we do. I will say this over and over again. We don't have all of the facts. We have what's been available publicly. And I don't want to rush to judgment. But, just evaluating the statutes and what happens with the law and how we do things. So they're looking at it right now, and that part's fine. If they decide to charge, this is where the immunity stuff starts coming in. If they decide to charge, say they feel that the use of deadly force was not justified, that he didn't have a right, the first thing that the defense attorney is going to do for Mr. Drejka is he's going to file a petition or a motion to use the stand your ground defense or self-defense style of defense. Correct. At that point, you can't deny that you did the action. This is called an affirmative defense, where you go, yes, I did it, but I was justified under this rule. Yeah. That prompts a hearing, not a jury trial or anything else. It's a hearing in front of a judge. The judge hears from the state attorney first, and it is the burden of proving that the person wasn't justified is on the state. Yes. They have to prove by clear and convincing evidence. That's it's more than beyond a reasonable doubt. Mm-hmm. That is less than, that is less than beyond a reasonable doubt, more than probable cause. So it's not quite enough that you could, if you pass that, you're definitely going to convict this person, but it's enough to say yes or no that defense worked or didn't work. Correct. It is on the state. You don't have to present as the defense any information. If the state can't get to that level, and the judge finds that that you were justified in using, force to defend yourself, it's over. The charges are dismissed.
And they can bring it up again.
They can't bring it up again. You've already been determined that is a justified, action. So you're done at that point. That doesn't stop the family from suing you civilly, and that's where we get the other immunity part. For a civil action. Correct. And that's a whole different hearing. Someone brings that lawsuit against you. The family, in this case of Mr. McGlockto, brings a civil suit against Mr. Drejka, and you have, another hearing. Again, you get filed. The first thing your defense attorney is going to do is say, hey, this was justified, and we have another hearing. Different judge, different rules, different court.
This is where I totally disagree with this part.
Well,
because if it was already justified under the courts and everything else that what I did was justified, why tie up my time, courts, and waste my money?
Well, it's not really a waste of your money, because if it was justified, the second hearing, you get to present the same stuff. Now the burden is on you as the person who used the force, but it's a preponderance of the evidence level. Preponderance of the evidence is literally 50.1% for me, 49.9 for them. I win. So I had just a little bit more. So it's a lower burden, and the burden is shifted to someone else.
Would they have to, if the judge says, okay, Joe, you were justified in your force, this is a frivolous, whatever they're going to call it, do they have to pay me back?
They do. If that happens in the civil case, and the judge rules in your favor that it was justified, then the other side is responsible for attorney's fees, lost wages, anything else that may have come as a result of that charge.
Awesome. That really clears it up for a lot of people. And the misinformation, like you said, out there too, is just ridiculous. The amount of messages I get and everything else, especially questions we get in classes all the time.
Yes.
The trespassing thing, people just want to shoot people for being on their property. No. Now, here's a question for you. We got to explain to people. You cannot protect property.
Correct.
Yeah, you cannot use deadly force or force to defend stuff.
I spend so much time every single class because people think that they can go out and protect their car with force because it's getting broken into in the middle of the night in their driveway.
No, what you get to do in that point is get a new car.
Well, it depends. That's what you want to do right away.
Well,
But
if it gets to that level.
if somebody's breaking into your car, stealing whatever, money, stereo, whatever it is, what can you do in that situation, Tim?
The onus is on you to be an excellent witness. Take pictures, yell, scream.
Big attorney word.
Well, be an excellent witness. Get your camera phone out. Get your, take a picture of them. Try and get video. See if they're in a car. Be on the phone with 911. But your responsibility is to protect yourself, and you can be a good witness. If they happen, if they don't like that and they start coming towards you and they become a threat to you,
different story.
Then you defend yourself.
But I would never recommend going out there with your gun in hand or whatever in hand to go chase these people. Observe and report at that point in time.
Absolutely. That would be the responsible thing to do.
Tim, we got to get you on here again to talk about this stuff. Because we get so many questions about this whole stand your ground. We can spend a week talking about this. And really, it's justifiable use of force.
Yeah, it is. And it's, there are exceptions in Florida that allow you to stand your ground. And it's sometimes misapplied by the media. They don't understand that self-defense by itself is not part of stand your ground. Self-defense is its own thing.
Like, can you defend your house against a burglary?
You can you can defend yourself in your house against a burglary. You can't defend the house.
That would be a robbery then. It wouldn't be a burglary because a burglary, you're pretty much not going to be home.
Florida has actually different distinctions for that.
Well, listen, folks, we're going to be back next week. Maybe we'll finish this conversation.
Absolutely.
You want to do it next week?
I can do next week, yes.
We'll do it next week. Folks, have a great week. Lindsay, say bye.
Bye-bye.